Ever wondered what really goes on in the life of a health and fitness coach? Let's take a deep dive into the completely uncut version of what motivates our team to do what they do. Welcome to Behind the Drive. We are going rogue today. We're taking the podcast because if you've listened to the intro, it's going to say we're talking about people, the stories behind the trainer. We're not doing that today. But we do have Ethan. He's back.
G'day.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Do you feel nervous?
No, of course.
Good.
Come on.
I was just checking. You never know. Like, you've done a couple. You're a podcast, like entrepreneur. You do all these other things now.
I am following Jonty though, and he's a big fish. So,
did you listen to his podcast?
I did. Yeah,
it was actually really good.
Yeah, it was good.
Very, very. Not that it would be surprised, but it was good.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to it, listen to it.
You have to now. But yeah, we're going rogue. We're actually going to touch on some fitness stuff. Yeah. For once, as like a full directed kind of style. We're going to go through the top 5 most common questions from a nutrition point of view and a training point of view. And I think I didn't tell you this before, but this is what we're going to do.
All right.
We're going to take it in 2 avenues. So we're going to probably answer the question, and then we're going to give some trainers some insight of how they might like to explain it to their clients as well.
Mate, you run the show. You're in charge here.
Cool. So our first one, we're literally just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First nutrition question is the idea of what is the best diet to follow, right? So.
Oh God, I want to punch you in the face for asking me that.
I know, it's a tough one. Because it's like.
Do you know when you have when you know someone knows nothing about health and fitness and they ask a question like that? That's how you know.
They just don't know the right question to ask.
Nah,
that's literally
it, right? They don't. And that's what people will ask you comments in passing, which is the best exercise for chest or something, or some dumbass, which is it's just because they're not informed, of course. But at the same time, fuck man, that's the worst part about being a PT.
It hurts. It almost hurts us as someone in the industry to be like.
I got to tell you a little story before we jump into this. Sorry. We'll probably answer 3 questions today and have 400 tangents. This is tangent 1 of 400.
We can do it. That's how we can
But I was running this seminar for CSIRO, right? So it's a pretty serious seminar.
Yeah, you did it face-to-face as well, wasn't it?
I did a face-to-face one, which is another story there, but we'll park that. But I remember this in front of 300 people, and this guy's just how do I get 6-pack abs? And I just... I didn't even know how to.
Honestly, where do you even start? Where do you even start?
I mean, if you're saying the word 6-pack abs together as well, there's a problem. But yeah, I think that's the example of kind of questions that clients ask you, isn't it? It's just questions of that they've developed all this, I guess, knowledge through just bullshit, and that's how it's kind of spitting out of their mouth.
And I think that's why I wanted to try and go from both avenues here today. From how can we actually answer the question to the client, and then how can we think of some better questions to prompt to our clients from a trainer's perspective as well, and be like I appreciate that's what the information that you want to find out, but we actually have to answer these other questions first.
Yeah, well, let's go back to that question. So what was the question?
What is the best diet to follow?
What is the best diet to follow? The one that you will stick to.
That's the most annoying answer, but that's the actual answer.
100%. The best plan is the one you'll stick to. What's the best weight program? The one you'll stick to. 100%. What's the best running program? The one you'll stick to. Everything is about adherence, right? And I think that's what we miss as a personal training culture.
Because people will ask, should I do keto? Should I follow a vegan diet? Should I follow a paleo diet? And it's do you want to?
Yeah, 100%. It's got to come back down to what are you going to stick to, which then comes into what do you enjoy, what's realistic,
what are your goals?
Even just little things you can kind of go off from that question and be how many times a day should I eat, and then the answer is which is the one you're going to stick to, right? People get so caught up with once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, when really from 6 to 1, there's not that much of a benefit or difference between them, right? But what matters is what you're going to stick to.
100%. So. And again, that's so annoying because people want a concrete answer.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works, because there's too much variance between people, between from the logistics of your life. That is the biggest variable that you need to kind of revolve the whole answer around.
100%. I used to eat 6 meals a day when I didn't have a job that killed me. And then I used to eat like twice a day at some points, but I found like I'd get too hungry. Like it always comes down to you just being intuitive of what actually works. Like you need to be self-aware with it.
What do we think of something like keto then?
Well, I don't believe in any.
Have you done it?
Reduction? Yeah, I've done all of them. Like from like I guess from a point of view where I've wanted to understand them. Keto's gross because.
Do you feel?
Well, you don't sit there going, how can I get tons of vitamins and minerals in my body, do you? So you feel quite lethargic, and like there's like you can argue that there's benefits of ketosis, but like for Sharon and John, who are 45 years old, they're fucking where they can eat bacon 24/7, and like it's just a stupid concept, honestly. And any diet that cuts out one macronutrient, I think is a ridiculous concept that should be avoided. And I'm pretty vocal about that when I talk to clients about that.
I think you have to, because it is just not a long game.
No.
It's as simple as that. Unless you can do it forever.
Yeah.
Like, why would you? I understand you want to do
100%.
something for like a short term. You need to get a result for maybe a wedding or an event or something like that, and then you really need to like maximize that period of time and that diet, right? But if you're not going to do this for a long term like diet plan, then like why even considering it?
I think you've got to be really careful when you're answering these questions with clients too, right? Because there's a bit of an art of giving them what they want, but also what they need. And if you just give them what they need without taking into consideration what they want, they'll just go to someone who can. So this is the thing, when someone's like, if you get a client saying like, hey, I want to cut out carbs, you can't be like, oh, no, that's bloody dumb. Don't do that. And then they go, oh, well, okay, you didn't even listen to why. So you have to prompt with like seeking to understand before being understood, right? Like,
I couldn't agree more. And I actually had this with one of my clients. He wanted to stay in ketosis. He wanted to be, because he saw a bunch of information about it. He found it really quite easy to stick to as well. And I was like, cool, that's what you want to do. For the first like year of training him, he just didn't have any carbs. I'm like, I guess if you want to do it like that and you feel like you're getting some results, while I was building his trust, now he eats kind of whatever he wants.
Yeah, you got to build the trust first. And also the thing is with this, right, like what was the alternative prior to that? Like if he was having a pizza every day and now he's going to start eating more protein, eating cleaner and looking after himself a bit better, so what? He wants to do his little fun, weird, trendy diet that he's learned from Facebook. But, he'll come back around. He will.
And that's the thing he did. And if you can keep people for long enough, then the trust is built, and then like you can get the result that you want as a trainer, and you know that it's going to be right for them as well.
Yeah, 100%.
It's tough because I actually had this conversation with a client this morning on like bringing up this podcast and the topics we're going to talk about. 'Cause, I confide in my clients. This is what we do.
100%.
And she was like, I can imagine it must be hard as a trainer, and because she sees so much shit on the internet from so many different avenues, and like, how do you trust it as a client is her thought, and then how do you trust it as a trainer, because it's not regulated.
Yeah, do you know what I think that kind of is a good thing to bring up, right? Because I think how you know you've got a bad trainer is someone who's like super biased on one thing and thinks everything else is bad. Because when you've been in the industry for a long time and you've learned a lot, you realize that there's actually good in everything, right? So you see a benefit to keto, you see a benefit to, having only carbs and no fat. Like you learn all of these different things. So then you're a bit more of an open-minded person. Obviously, you still have preferences. But I think when you have someone who's super biased, you've got someone inexperienced.
Yeah, someone that sits at either end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Like you can't be all in on one thing and all out on another.
Yeah, 100%.
It's probably not a good sign.
Yeah. Like, oh, you got to do this to lose weight. It's like, okay, no, you don't. You can literally do this, and this, but good on you.
That's actually, we'll go on to the next question there, because it's one thing that a lot of probably online fitness coaches have as a marketing tool, like counting calories. And the second one we have on this list is, do I have to count calories to lose weight?
Yeah.
Or do I have to use MyFitnessPal to lose weight?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think with this, right, like in terms of how you want to lose weight, having some level of accountability with it is important. So to do that, you need to track something. But that doesn't mean if you need to track calories, it doesn't mean you need to track macronutrients, it doesn't mean you need to weigh your food, but being conscious and having intent behind what you're eating is what you need to track. So like for me, that is not tracking. Like I just know what I'm eating, but I've also built that knowledge base from years and years and years and years of tracking, right? So like, do you need to track calories? No. Is it a useful tool? Yes, for some people. It definitely teaches you about food. Like you learn, you can learn how 100 grams of sweet potato is, 14 grams of carbs. Like you learn those things so that you can intuitively know better, right? Like intuitive eating with knowledge is more powerful. So it's kind of like, once again, I'm always going to be that kind of middle ground where I can see benefit, but the right tool for the right job, right? Like
I think there's a disclaimer that there are populations you absolutely should never use it with.
Yeah, agreed.
Like we're talking eating disorders or disorder eating, like anyone with those tendencies, probably not a good idea, right? Majority of people aren't in that category, and majority of people probably also don't want to do it.
So for me, like the one thing that I would say, if you're a personal trainer and you've never tracked calories before, you 100% need to do a good 6-month stint, because like, can you tell me how many grams of protein are in 100 grams of chicken? If you can't know your staples, then you're letting your clients down, because when you can, and the goal of a personal trainer is to have all of that information and then simplify the shit out of it, right? So you can be like, I know that in 100 grams of chicken, there's roughly 30 grams of protein or whatever it is, right?
Like 25.
But then I can just say to my client, hey, just put a handful of chicken in. But logically it's the same thing. But how do you know that without
It's like you're a translator of languages.
Yeah, exactly.
For your clients.
Yeah.
You need to have all that information so when they ask you the question, you can speak in client language instead of saying, there's 25 grams of that, and I need you to have 4 servings of 25 to 30 grams per day to actually hit your 100 grams of protein per day on average, because that's what you need to grow muscle. It's like, just tell them to eat 100%. A handful of chicken.
Personally though, on this, right, like we can be general, but to actually kind of lean towards one side, as a result point of view, after years of seeing clients that do track and don't track, clients that do track do get a better result. Now, does that mean because those are the type of people who are more invested? I don't know, but I'm just talking from like a summary point of view here. More people that I've seen track get a better result. But the other side to that is, do they keep that result because they're so intense? I don't know. It's just, there's lots of things to think about.
I actually agree with you here. In terms of not sitting like too far each end of the spectrum, I would lean towards tracking as an absolutely useful tool for everyone and everyone. Like anyone, obviously, if you don't sit in that like eating disorder eating pattern, if you can do it for 2 weeks or you can do it for 4 weeks, at one period of your life, it will change your perspective of understanding food.
Yeah, it doesn't have to have a negative connotation to it. You don't have to, like, I mean, this is classic fitness industry, right? We love to just swing the other way massively. And now you've got all these people who have suffered from eating disorders popping on Instagram being like, you don't need to track. It's like, yeah, you don't need to track, but information is fucking power, man. Like, learn. If you don't know, learn. And tracking is a great way to go.
And even if it's not for weight loss, right? Just understanding your minimum protein intake of the day, or what foods have high protein and what don't, or what foods have enough iron in them, or like actual micronutrient intake, like calcium. What foods can actually tick the calcium box for you?
Yeah, it's important to know, like, you're going to be eating for the rest of your life. You might as well know what it's made up of. Like, do you want to know what cashews are? Do you want to know if they're proteins or fats? Do you like what, or which one's higher? Like, you need to learn these things. I don't
want to be defeated by marketing and advertising that says this product is high protein when it's like, it says it's 20% protein, and it's like, that has 4 grams of protein in it, but it's marketed as a protein like product. I'm like, I don't want to be fooled by that.
No, 100%. When that kind of goes into like nutrition labels as well, the same thing. But I mean, nutrition labels is, there's like little principles you can take away from all of these things anyway. And like nutrition labels is the same thing. It's just like, find the simplest way of looking at them, which is usually the least amount of ingredients.
Yeah. Or like shifting towards, does this have a good like ratio of protein to fat?
Yeah, it just comes down to what you're looking for, right? But I think in general, when a client picks something up, if they see tons of ingredients, you can almost go, well, it's probably something else we could swap this out for. Very rarely is it not the case. Yeah.
I agree. So, speaking of, the next question is, should I avoid carbs? Or should I avoid grains? Or should I avoid... another one that's come up recently.
These questions are so 2008.
I know they feel old to us though, but I reckon they're still being asked, because the other little point on there is like seed oils. Have you heard that recently? The carnivore MD just like attacking seed oils.
Man, I feel like everyone attacks something, and it's just it's ridiculous, really.
Like you don't want to use oil in your. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But carbs, should we avoid it? Should you stop it after a certain period of the day? Should you like what do you?
Yeah, I eat 500 to 600 grams of carbs a day, right?
Two double pack of rice. I'm gonna
eat. Yeah, exactly. I think. Like you've got to look at where these things came from, right? Because these things have come from like an advertising era. So there was the era of no fat, and then there was the era of no carbs, and then there was the era of high protein. And like you can actually look at the demographic of your clients, and you can see based off their age which kind of tendencies they have. And like you'll see an older generation tend to be no fats, where you'll see a slightly younger generation, when I say 30s, 40s, being no carbs. So like they're all just eras. So all of these questions are just based off which era they were smashed with advertising, which is really sad. But in general, like to summarize your question, obviously no, right? Like the way that I describe it to a client is like this, you've got your 3 macronutrients, which carbs, proteins and fats, and there's alcohol, but we don't talk about that one. I say protein is you need to have every day, same amount every day roughly. And then your carbs or fats are your choices based off how much you want to gain or lose. That's it. That's how I tend to explain it, and just try and really dumb it down. But there's never a reason to just cut them out.
I agree. Again, we're probably going to have...
Well, yeah, no shit. We've been in the industry together for 6 years.
And we also don't sit like either way. And I think that... Not to say that we're the best fucking personal trainers in the world or the best...
Speak for yourself.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
Maybe not. But like, we sit level-headed.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if you have a client who cuts out carbs, they're going to reduce their calories and they're going to lose weight, likely. If you have a client who cuts out fats, when they eat a lot of fats, they're probably going to lose weight. So like if someone's overeating and that's the mental step they needed to lose the weight, then I wouldn't be necessarily against it depending on how biased they are towards it. But I would prefer them not to, based off the evidence that we've seen from like a sustainability point of view, right? So the alternative to that is like, why do you want to lose? Like, why do you want to cut out all carbs? What do you think this would do to you? And then a lot of the time they have no real response that actually carries any weight. So once you've heard them explain it and they realize they can't explain it, it starts to make more sense for them. So that's why like all of these questions I think are going to have similar answers on what I'm talking about, how you would deal with it from a client perspective, right? Which is about getting information first. So like if, likely the people that listen to this podcast are our personal trainers anyway. So if you're getting a client ask you about something, instead of saying no or yes.
Or giving them an answer, ask them a question.
Ask them a question and ask them a few questions. So if you said...
Should I have carbs after 7 o'clock?
I say, why do you feel like if you would have them after 7? Like what do you think would happen?
And then I would probably say, I don't know. I saw it on Instagram.
Yeah, your body doesn't know if it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, right? The better way to think about it would be things like X, Y, Z, I
think I absolutely agree. You should be, every time someone asks you a question and you feel like that is a myth in the industry or something along those lines, be like inquisitive, find out where they got that information from. And if they can't recite it from somewhere specific, they can't say they got it from their doctor, then you're probably...
But even then, there's another whole bloody can of worms.
But you can get them to think of the answer and realize it for themselves, and that is 100%. such a better way of approaching tricky conversations.
Yeah, 100%. And like you look at the opposite way of dealing with this. Can I have carbs after 7? Absolutely, you can. Okay, cool. That's it. Like, and they feel there's no like epiphany out of this.
They also might feel offended.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I thought something else, now I'm wrong.
Yeah. You're challenging their views without helping them understand why their views are, misguided.
And that like personal attack where you say, I can't believe you thought that. You should be able to separate your views from your personality, but a lot of people can't.
Yeah. I like to think of a personal trainer as this like powerful being where we kind of like sit above our own thoughts. And it's a weird way of looking at it, but like we are sitting in on our own conversation and we're like trying to mediate what they think and what we think and kind of just like bring the real solution to light, right? Like you're not there to have your own opinion on it. You're there to like...
Filter. You're there to filter information for them and then get them to come to the conclusions themselves.
Yeah.
As many times as possible.
Yeah. They should come up with the answer. You just guide them there.
And that almost hurts our ego.
You're a politician.
Yeah. That almost hurts our ego because then it feels like we haven't taught them anything. And it's like, but you just made them feel like they taught it themselves. And if you're really thinking long game as a trainer, that's the best outcome.
Yeah.
Because then your clients are going to do stuff on their own without you. And it's like, oh, no, they don't need me. But they're actually getting a result.
But you look at where motivation is a good way to think about this, right? If I was to try and motivate you, there's two ways of going about it. I could go about it being like, come on, Seaton, you've got 5 more, you got to do this for yourself, blah, 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 cringe. And then the other way is being like, what would it mean to you if you didn't do this, right? Like, and that's just thought-provoking questions. But it's the same way when we're trying to answer hard questions or silly questions, right? Like, can I have carbs after 7? You don't be like, yeah, have carbs after 7. You ask the thought-provoking question. Yeah.
And one lasts a long time, one doesn't. One requires you to be there at all times, one doesn't. One likely has a big peak and then disappears, and one doesn't. Right? Like if you can instill that intrinsic motivation instead of yelling at them or having to answer those questions all the time, then it's just going to be a win all around.
Yeah, agreed.
You're going to love this, but the 4th question on here is, how should I eat to get 6-pack abs?
Oh God, you like that one, Charles?
My question.
How can I eat to get 6-pack abs, man? I mean, like, there's so much to unravel there.
What questions would you ask someone that?
If someone that actually asked me, if someone genuinely asked me that, if someone asked me, I would have to unpack a lot, right? But
There's so many layers.
If they said, what can I eat to get 6-pack abs? I said, it's probably more of a question of what not to eat, my friend. And then I would go, what do you want from abs? Like, why do you want abs? They'll talk to me about their body composition goals. And then I'd somehow bring the conversation back to what they're currently eating. And then I'd look for areas and I'd almost steer away from that actual question and bringing it to more like a holistic view of what they want and where they're currently at. And then I'll talk to them about eating habits we can improve. You know what I mean? Because really, you're not trying to give them an answer off that question because there is no fucking answer to that. Like, without giving them, all this information. It's about just going back to where they're at.
I would definitely go from a humor aspect as well. I'll be like,
agreed.
I didn't know you were going to step on stage. When's like your bodybuilding show going? You're like, oh no, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they'd be like, oh, and then you go, oh, but that's typically what you need to do.
I think if I was going to just, sometimes like you get the male question is 6-pack abs and the female question used to be toned. That's moving away a little bit, which is nice. But to answer that question as well, I tend to use things like, let's explain what actually tone and being ripped is. And I think getting clients to understand that concept's really important because you can be, really muscular, really fat at the same time and be huge. And you can be like, they need to understand where tone comes from. And then that's where, you can describe, like, if you imagine having muscle is this percentage and then having fat is this percentage. If we decrease fat down, like, it's hard to do it visually here, right? But I tend to draw it out and explain to them.
It's like layers on your skin.
Yeah, exactly, layers. And those layers can be completely different and produce completely different results. So then sometimes I'll get people to show me photos of what they want to see as well. So like you'll have this is the best one, right? Like you'll get a 5'2" guy that is, massive ears, shaved head.
Probably not trained too much in his life. Like
never trained. And he goes, I go, who do you want to look like? And this 5'2" guy shows me a photo of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm going, mate, like, I'm all for being jacked. But even if you get big, like, you just want you to know, you're probably going to look more like, this guy than you are Arnold Schwarzenegger. And getting them to realize that, like, there's certain genetic makeup that you can't shift. Like, if I get jacked, I'm just going to look stubby and short. Like, that's how it's going to be.
I can't grow.
Yeah,
I don't think lifting weights will grow me.
And you know what? I've had that question before as well. I've actually had a question and being like, what exercises can I do to get taller?
Just lots of
It makes me think of that South Park
exercises.
episode. You ever see that South Park episode where they get taller? And they, all right, well, you know what? That's one. If you've seen that, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Just lots of feet, intrinsic muscle exercises.
Like, people literally do that and they hang thinking they're going to get, like, it's just crazy, man.
That's a whole another kettle of fish, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's not on my list, so...
No, we can't answer that. Move on.
I don't want to approach that. Last one on this one is... we kind of touched on it before, but like, how important is when I eat? And should we look at something like fasting, or should we look at like having 6 meals versus 1 meal? Or because actually a valid question. This is a common one.
It's a valid question too, and I think there's more there's more science involved in the answer of this question versus some of the other opinions, right? But I think the important thing to remember with this one is it's still going to come back down to what we spoke about before. Like, what are you going to stick to long term? So if you're going to say to yourself, I want to gain muscle, so it's probably better if I'm spreading out protein throughout the day, which is a valid thing, right? So I'm going to eat 6 times a day. I'm going to eat at 5 a.m., 7 a.m., etc., right? But I'm never actually going to do it. So I end up eating less total protein over a day because I'm skipping meals. So should I just have 4 meals a day, jack up the protein serving sizes, and know that over a week I'm going to hit more total protein? So like, optimal versus possible is a very, very important thing. And that's what I describe it to clients. And I always say things like, look, if you were to eat 2 meals a day or 6 meals a day, the difference is going to be very marginal. So which would you prefer? And I'll say, well, look, I think it's probably really realistic for me to have like 3 meals a day. It's like, cool, 3 meals a day it is.
Done.
And look, if their goal is really to get jacked, 3 meals a day is still going to be fine.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be fine.
It's literally pedestal, total calorie intake, total protein intake, total calorie intake, and then meal timing maybe.
Yeah, and look, like, would I recommend 3 over 1? Of course. Like, from an adherence point of view and experience, I've seen people eat once a day. It's very, very few that can stick to it. And I think that also from like a hunger, peaks and troughs point of view, you're gonna suffer a little bit more from that once a day.
And try and eat. Well, actually, depends what you're eating. But try and eat 2,500 calories. Probably what you need in one meal, and hit your total protein intake.
It's gross. Yeah, you're gonna be farting out your ass for the next 3 hours.
So much protein to have in one meal.
Yeah, like that's so. I mean, there is factors, right? Like that's a really good point. Like if you're trying to gain a lot of muscle, then eating once or twice a day or 3 times a day can be real. Like if I had to eat 3 times a day, that would be too hard for me. I wouldn't want to do it. So I do 4. But I used to do 6, and then I used to do 2. Like I've floated around all these different things to find what like equilibrium looks like for me. And then like, for a customer, like for a client, right, asking them what they already do on average, and chances are it's always like you could almost put everyone in a similar basket, right? They wake up, they have a coffee, they don't really have much breakfast, and then they get to work, and then
a piece of toast, don't they?
Oh yeah, maybe a piece of toast, right? And then for lunch, they might just have a little salad, right? Because that's what we're 80 kilos overweight, but we have a salad for lunch, and then at dinner we just have whatever's going, like whatever we cook. And
I've heard that 100 times.
I've heard that. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that. And if you're listening to this, you've definitely heard that if you're a personal trainer, right? Like 100%. And what it really looks like is probably more like this. I wake up late, I rush to work, I get some crappy lunch, but it's not super filling. By the time I get home, I'm so fucking miserable because I'm starving that I eat 3,000 calories at night. And then because I haven't fueled myself during the day, I can't stop eating at night. So I eat way too much. And then I do the same thing and I guilt spiral the next day and do it all over again, right? Like that is literally everyone's problem.
And like the majority of those meals are, they've just got takeaway from the closest cafeteria, whatever it is.
100%.
And I actually don't see that as an issue because it means we have control over what they can get. Yeah. So that's like a great start. Like we can manipulate that. Then how easy is it to introduce breakfast? Because it's the first meal of the day. You've got a little bit more energy.
But what do you see as the problem with that, right? Because when a client, let's say that client comes to you and they say, I want to lose weight. What do you think they're thinking? They're thinking things like, oh, well, how do I stop eating dinner at night, right? So their mentality is, how do I restrict? But then our mentality and what your mentality should be is, how do we actually nourish, right?
How can we add stuff in? You don't want to restrict behaviors because it's
do you know what you see with the issue with that? And I'm sure you get it too, right? You've got this customer who's thinking, I eat too much. And then they're getting your 21-year-old PT telling this 45-year-old doctor saying, hey, you actually need to eat more. And this guy's going, nah. And this is where you've got to meet them in the middle, right? And that's where it's like you've got to actually be able to articulate why you're adding breakfast to their already calorie-dense day so that they don't eat that calorie-dense dinner at night. Like it's just, personal training is such an art, isn't it?
It is because it's manipulating the textbook doesn't really matter. Like you have minimum base level knowledge and then you have to try and play around with the person in front of you.
Yeah.
And you have to convince them to do the things that you know are going to work well, but you also have to convince them in a way that makes them feel like they're making the choice. Like literally what we said before.
Yeah.
It's literally art of like...
It is. It's just
almost manipulation in a sense.
It is. Absolutely.
Like,
100%.
In the nicest way possible, because manipulation
Completely
has that
agree.
negative connotation.
Yeah. No, it is. Coaching is an art, and it is a lot about almost like strategic lying, well-placed lying,
Yeah.
and to them, and it's not like you're doing it from malicious intent, but you are having to sometimes manipulate the truth so that you get them to understand the real truth.
And that's going to be... if you've been in the industry for 6 months, that's going to be like, no way, I just got to tell them the right answer.
Yeah. Well, if information was the way that we solved everything, everyone would be fit, healthy, and rich, right? Because you can go on Google and get a pretty good meal plan.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT will write me a bloody full training
Write
plan.
whatever you want. Write whatever you want. That's information is not the answer.
Yeah, no, it never is. It's always application. Yeah.
Education is different to information as well. Like educating and speaking to someone, and trying getting on their level and using different terminology and language that they understand. That's education. That's teaching.
Yeah.
Like it's completely different to just base level. Here's your piece of paper. Do this.
Yeah.
Do this.
Yeah.
Cool. Training questions.
All right, give them to me.
What type of training should I do to lose weight?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to start knocking you out.
PTSD here.
So like once again, it's just like I wish these were questions that I could actually answer without unraveling a world of problems.
What's better to do, Ethan?
Yeah.
Should I do HIIT? Should I do cardio? Should I do yoga?
Can we just summarize the podcast? What's the best one you'll stick to? Done. Yeah. Now, like, what's the best? This is the thing, right? Because obviously the two answers here is like what they're looking for is should I do weights or should I do cardio? Really, that's what this person is asking, right? And the way I like to be able to kind of answer it is say there's no best exercise, but however, we need a good foundation of resistance training, and it's always nice to have a bit of cardio there too. Which do you prefer? I love weights training. But I don't really like cardio. Cool. Well, why don't we do 2 to 3 resistance sessions, and then we just go for a 20-minute walk every day or something? Like, it comes down to adherence again. So you're building the program out, and in the back of your mind as a personal trainer, you should know what kind of like the bare minimums are, which for the average person, that would be something like 2 resistance sessions a week, 2 full body resistance sessions, because we know hitting each muscle group twice a week has a massive benefit versus hitting it once, right? Agreed? Yeah?
Agree.
And then we know that cardiovascular health is important, so we need to be doing something that stimulates our heart. Cool. Okay, well, we've got 2 full body resistance sessions and we've got a cardio session.
Yeah, I think the physical activity guidelines, if you don't know what that is, like go look that up now. If you haven't, it should have been covered in the certs, should have been covered in like sports science. It's like I think it is 1 to 3 resistance training sessions per week, and then like 45 minutes of vigorous exercise plus like 150 minutes of low to moderate.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a couple of walks.
Yeah.
Maybe a HIIT session if you do want to do that, a run or a cycle or a swim or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Playing with the kids for like 25 minutes, just accumulated across the week. And it's not all in one bout.
No,
I think that's the biggest thing to remember. You don't have to do all this in one bout. You can do your 2 sessions.
You can do 3 15-minute weight sessions a week.
100%.
And it doesn't even need to be weights. This is the thing. It's all about meeting someone where they are, right? Like if you have someone who loves cycling and they want to cycle, let them fucking cycle,
Absolutely.
man. Relax. Yeah, just let them. And if they're overweight and they want to lose weight as a cyclist, well, shit. It's still going to be about food, isn't it? Like, the only kind of argument to that is having muscle makes things easier. That's what I'm going to kind of...
It builds up your...
you've got more room for error. Yeah. You've got more room for error. You tend to look better as well when you aren't as lean. So, like, if you're a very skinny person and you're not lean, you just feel a bit scrawny, right? But if you're a muscular person and you're not lean, you can still feel and look good. Like, it's... The muscle, and also like, the main thing is muscle is a massive burner of calories.
It's actually metabolic tissue. It actually has life.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas fat on your body has a little bit of life. People that are like morbidly obese in that category, like a BMI over 40 plus, they still have a lot of calories that they burn because they're heavier. The bones and the muscles and everything have to carry that weight. Yeah. So they can still burn a high amount, but it's like... muscle is just better at burning.
Absolutely. You got more room for flexible life. That's the way I say it. Like, you know, have a bit of muscle so you've got a bit of freedom. Bigger bucket.
You can just do more things as well.
Yeah, like the odd KFC when you've got heaps of muscle. I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms.
I think on that as well, it's an important thing to do for your health. You also need to know that the extreme of that, you don't need to have 20 kilos of muscle on your frame to be healthy. Like, it's actually probably a negative end of the spectrum to start thinking, I need to pursue bodybuilding in that sense to be like,
honestly, I feel like I'm the perfect example of that, because I've been chasing muscle growth since I was 16, and then now I'm 94 kilos, 5'9", and I feel like shit at 94 kilos. And like, I'm not, you know, I wouldn't be above 20% body fat. So I'm reasonably lean at 94, but I feel sluggish. I feel slow. When I bend down, I feel crap, because now there's muscle to, like, I'm unnecessarily muscular for what I want out of my life. And like, from an aesthetics point of view, once you let go of that as well, like from an ego point of view, that was great for me for the last 8 years. But now, as I'm kind of a little bit more self-secure with myself, right? Like, I don't need this. So now I'm actually trying to lose weight again. Like, it's just crazy how the chase of attainment is more enjoyable sometimes than the attainment of it, right? Always. Actually, always. Yeah, 100%. But you got to always be chasing.
100%.
Just chase something different.
100%.
Move that goalpost.
And I think it's never be satisfied.
That's it. I'll be satisfied never
when I'm dead.
Yeah.
But I think there is actually some pretty strong research coming out that's like, you don't want to be really, really muscular. You don't want to be doing lots and lots of strenuous activity. You just need to be doing the absolute minimum, stay within a healthy body fat percentage, move every day, be around people, eat whole foods, and it's like, that's
do you know what's funny though? No one really gives a shit about health until it's taken away from them, right? Yeah. We're in a different category here, I think, as personal trainers. But for the general person, when someone's overweight and unhealthy, you think they give a shit about healthy the way that they tell you they want to be healthier, but their driver is how they feel about themselves, right? Like, they're self-conscious about how they look and how they feel, not from a lethargic point of view either, right? So, but I think once you've achieved that idea of how you look and it's not as much of an issue, then you start to revert back to things that really should matter in the first place, things like health and longevity.
Yeah, and I think you get to a point where, like, I don't know, maybe for us in the industry, like, you try and look to build that muscle, heaps of that, and then you eventually get to a point where you're like, actually, no, I prefer my resting heart rate to go down a little bit lower.
Yeah, dude, man. But you know what? That's even crazier you're saying that, because my resting heart rate now, I can't get it as low as I used to be because of my weight difference. Like, and I feel like I'm just as fit, but it's just like weight. My body's got to work harder.
That's
even going for a run, like, I feel like I feel like a Rottweiler with a broken hip. Like, it's just, it's crazy.
Well, we're going to wrap up all that stuff for today. We can do training a little bit more on another podcast, but
yeah, we'll do part 2.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a choice now. We have a choice. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully people took something away from that, and we'll get some trainers and some other people on soon.
Sweet. Thank you.